call me up like nothing ever changed. Same old tone like we were still the same. Said you miss me, said you lost your way. Funny how you always say that phrase. I was walking home in melting snow. Springtime lights starting to glow. I laughed out loud right on the street. Guess you picked the worst time to repeat. You say you changed, you say you tried, but I remember every lie. I closed that door, I threw the key, and honestly I feel so free. No, we are not going back again. Not this time, not as friends. I finally learned the lesson then. No, we are not going back again. You can talk, you can pretend. This is where the story ends. I am done explaining why. No, we are not going back again. What's going on, guys? We're back again for another streaming session. Today's a holiday, right? Markets closed for stocks. Futures are open right now. It's kind of what we're seeing right now. And I kind of wanted to start this or just go over this early instead of doing it late like how we usually do on a Sunday night. And the reason why is because ideally, I don't think futures are really going to change much till tomorrow open. We did have a pretty decent gap down here, and we've been sliding since, but we found support today kind of near open or after open, and we're kind of just pushing back into this range now. Now, I would not be shocked, surprised, or any of that if we see this end up pushing right back up, and maybe Tuesday open we're playing, with options upward, calls to close the gap back up into range, maybe, or they take some of it out. It's something like this, or maybe we get a little bit like this, and then it pushes up, eats a little bit, comes back down, kind of thing, or stays, or we eat the whole thing. Who knows? We don't know, but I do want to get on here and just kind of get the game plans already out to you guys before, or it's too late and all that. Hopefully you guys are enjoying y'all's day off here. I know I am. So let's get into it here. If you're watching this and you're enjoying this, please give a retweet to the stream, like it, help me out, show some love. Let's get into it here. Now, SPY QQ in retrospect, yes, we still had a decent amount of gap below us, right? For QQ, we filled a gnarly gap, two gnarly gaps from Thursday into open, and then Friday and open, two pretty decent gaps that we filled on that Friday, right? Friday filled that day, and then the rest of that day ended up getting filled. So we gapped up right there. We ate that gap on Friday. Puts obviously went crazy. We created a gap here like this right here. Now we ate some of that on Thursday, kind of near that close. They smacked it, and so they left only about that much gap left. You know how I knew Friday those puts would bang? It was because likely that they're just going to keep this in range. It was either that or breakout, which I don't see how we were going to break out, because SPY was near all-time highs again still, and Q was near that 628, 627 breakout like zone we've been needing to get through. And if we look on the 4-hour, you can see that zone up here. It was either we break that on Friday and go higher for the breakout, a weekly breakout, or we just come back into range with two gaps below us. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense how we would come back into range with two gaps below us. Easy. We knifed them. We ate them. And it just kind of sat back and did nothing after that. Puts, I entered the 623 lotto puts up here at 624, 60-ish. By the bottom down here, those went over 300%. Crazy stuff. I already did the recap on Friday, so I won't go over that. If you want to watch that, it's already posted on YouTube, and it's posted on X. If you just scroll down, you'll find it. So yes, Q does have a gap here, and you see my target right there, 614 area. And I would have to assume that's getting hit, or we hit that here overnight after hours. Now we don't know where we're going to open up. We don't know where that's going to be. And it all really depends on pre-market.
going into Tuesday, right? And if we're down significantly at all, we're going to be creating a gap above. So if we don't tag this or open up at this at all, this will still be open. So it's going to be a very tricky area. Now, for me, I would say anything above 611 down here, right? Anything above this, we have a lot of support down here. So from 611 all the way until I would say down here from 605, I would say 605, 606 area. So just all this shaded area or just these zones right here. Look how tight, it's just a lot of traffic here. And last time we were here, we blasted out of this. I knew we have a lot of support in this area from 611 to 606. I would say, you know, wait for the bulls to kind of step in this area. Now we lose 606, then yes, we're coming down to that 600 level. 600 is a big level. I would be kind of risking off with calls or not be kind of looking for calls if we, go back down and touch 600. Now I need to see what we do at 600. Um, Anything above 600 for me for QQ is very bullish. Now we're right at the edge though. We're right at the edge at that 600 level. If we end up losing that 600 level, I start flipping bearish. I start flipping bearish for QQ. Things, the trend will be dominated by bears at that point, and I would be a little bit more reluctant to want to be slamming the dip with calls and stuff like that. So we will see kind of where we line up here after hours or overnight first, and then kind of pre-market. But I would assume we're going to get a move down around to this gap. And if we don't, just know that, if we end up holding above 618, which would be, 618, 617, which would be this zone right here. Say we miraculously maybe get back to it or hold this and open up around this. Any type of push up into this range, I'm slamming for calls for that upside, into this range. But again, we will see. So this is one of these times where, if you're not a Rico member, this might be a little bit difficult for you because you don't have the zones. This is where I say, and we have a gap at 609, 608. So we have some smaller gaps below us, reasons to go down. But if you're a Rico Cap member, this is where I just say we're going to trust the zones. We just trust the zones. We lean on the zones, and we win knowing where we are with the zones. Now with SPY, we just could not break and make new all-time highs here. We do have a gap at 690. We closed around 691. We filled most of that gap on Friday, couldn't quite do it. I would assume we're going to fill that completely, and we're going to open up possibly down to 685 here, where we have a bigger gap below 685 down to 682. That's another position I'm ready to play. That's a decent gap. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if we open up under that. We open up under that and we're down here 680 area. That makes a lot of sense. That purple level, 679.83, pretty much 680. That's a big level. And usually, anytime we get down to that purple level, a big move happens off that level. And you can see as the example, not too long ago, the last time we were down there on the end of December, beginning of January, you can see we just ripped right back 3-4 days later, new all-time highs, and then we kind of kept it pushing. So we will see if we end up kind of coming back down to that purple level. But I would say anything above 680 for me is going to be bullish. Anything below it, things start to get a little bit bearish. This could be, I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I still can't get too bearish near all-time highs. We're not far off from all-time highs, but we will see what we do around these levels. We do have gaps. If we don't fill them, we open up down here. We will be watching to see if we get down to them to fill them. I'll be ready to play those puts. If not, and we kind of open up under these gaps, meaning we filled them, and we create a huge gap above, then I'm going to be looking to try and play that. If the tide kind of supports it, if we see that, bears are just kind of stepping in more control and the market's a little uncertain, and key thing would be no real buyer stepping in. That would be the key thing. It's not so much of bears stepping in because we're still near all-time highs. We need to see buyers step in, and that's the key thing. Will all-time high buyers or buyers step in to support any type of bouncing or anything like that? We need to be on their backs if they do, so we can ride and make that money on the move up. Now, that's going to be the hardest part. So I will be watching for that to see what they kind of do and, what happens. Because it's never fun being in calls and no real buyers are stepping in. No one's trying to step in to help. That's probably the worst part about it. So you got to be able to ride with them and not look to, I would say, be the front runner, because you yourself won't be enough to, raise that price action and get you to where you need to go. That's the hardest part, I would say. Hardest part. So definitely that's what I'm going to be looking for, as kind of a sign. We'll see kind of where we open up overnight. As far as setups and stuff like that, the only one I'm watching really is IWM. Huge flag up here, new all-time highs. I like this up or down. A break of 267.05 will end up rocketing us to 268, 270 as the next move up. If we don't get that, we do have a gap down here at 262. So under 265, I believe we should easily, end up, breaking that, ending up losing that level and coming down right there. So that's a win waiting to happen as well. Up or down, I'm willing to be ready for that. Small caps, don't necessarily do the same thing as big tech and, SPY and all that. So we will see what they kind of end up doing there. We are watching gold a little bit here. Gold knifed into some of that major gap it created. Still has a huge one below that it needs to finish. Gold hitting high, silver hitting high still. So this is still kind of pushing up right now. We could look at this, going into Tuesday as possibly a play. We will see if there's no real action. I try not to kind of look at maybe some of these individual names as setups, because we don't know where they're going to kind of create. Again, we're going to have to assume a lot of these names are going to be gapping down. So they're going to be creating those gaps above, and maybe, just maybe, any of those showing some strength. I will be, looking and ready to play that. Right. We see a pretty big, I would say, kind of bear flag right here for Amazon. Now, technically, yes, bear flag. You can see that right there pretty nicely. Now, what happens if it comes down to this demand, holds, and then pushes up for that gap fill? Yes, this is a bear flag, but that calls could work if we hold that demand and push right back up into range, and it's just pinned under the 241, 240 zone. Again, that would still work, and I'm going to be watching for something very similar to that. Whoever's the more, I would say, stronger name overnight, pre-market, we'll see. Nvidia was really trying to hang on there on Friday before it ended up pulling down. Nvidia has a gap at 183. If it doesn't get to that, I could easily play that as well. Something I'm looking for as well. But hardest part about is, kind of the gap downs is kind of just making those game plans. So that's why I say, you know, let's not get too concrete with some of these game plans on the individual names. For SPY and QQ, obviously we're ready to go with that. IWM, same thing. But, we're seeing on the 4 hour and the 1 hour for MNQ and MES, pushing back up kind of in the range here, and buyers are kind of stepping in a little bit. It's very possible that they get us right to the gap, by possible Tuesday open, or maybe, Tuesday pre-market, and we can maybe see some buyers step in, and we can play some cheap calls in the move up here. That's always it's always a good play. Now, gap down days are a lot harder than gap up days. Not necessarily do we close the whole gap. Sometimes we hit it, eat some of it, and get out of there. Sometimes we fill the whole thing, and lately we have been filling the whole thing. Now, we just don't know. When it comes to gap ups, and we feel it's every time we kind of create kind of a gap up, and in that same day we fill the whole thing. Lately, we haven't been filling the whole thing, right? We didn't fill the whole thing on Thursday. We finally did it on Friday, and we still have some gaps open, that I already described for SPY QQ. So that's very strange. So what that's telling me, things kind of shifted a little bit, right? Where any gap downs, we've been filling the gaps back up, but on any gap ups, we haven't been filling it on the move down. So things are pretty bullish in that sentiment. Because think about it, gap ups, and they don't fill the gap all the way completely down. So no reason they're fighting it on the move down. And any gap downs, they push it right back up. It sounds pretty bullish, but we will see. Right now, it looks like MNQ and ES are kind of, bulls are kind of stepping it up. We're finally above VWAP there. We're above a level, and we're kind of just pushing in this range. It's possible we just kind of magnet right back up to that 25,515 MNQ level here. We'll see what kind of happens going into today, right? And futures markets are open right now. We'll see what they do, and then overnight, and then pre-market, we'll see what happens there. So still a lot of time for stocks to kind of settle out here. And I think this was the game plan for Trump, and any of the bad news dropping. They wanted to do this in the most strategic way. And, what's more strategic than a, extra holiday, holiday week where, that Monday things always fizzle out. And then it's possible we just come back to, just being down a little bit on Tuesday morning or, with a gap above now. And so that's the crazy thing about it. So we got to be very careful and just have no bias, open mind going into it. That's why I'm not going to be kind of giving y'all any setups until Tuesday's over, right? End of maybe Tuesday night. For Spy and QQ game plans, the zones, they never change. So we're always prepared for those regardless. When it comes to some of these individual setups, we will see kind of how that affects. IWM, though, we're watching that big time. And of course, any high conviction plays I will be posting to the members when I see them, as I always do. I love those plays. If you want access to those plays, watt.com/Rio Capital, become a member. You get my trades, get access to charts, all that, and start winning with us. So fresh week ahead. Can't wait. Excited. We will see kind of what happens going into maybe this week. We have PC data, right? We have, holiday week, core PC data. We have earnings season kicking off. Trump's supposed to be speaking, very interesting. Usually when it's a holiday week, things get a little bit slower. And if things get a little bit slower and there's gaps above, it's possible all we do is kind of melt back up into that range and, eat those gaps. So, keep an eye on something like that, because that might be the easiest thing that we might get, as something like that where gaps kind of create above us, volume's too low, or volume's way too low to sell off, so we end up just kind of wicking back up into it. And that's probably the more, I would say, predictable thing. But again, this week we're going to go in here with a non-bias, nothing like that. We have gaps, and when we get to those gaps, we know those are guaranteed winners for us. So we just have to stay patient. And if you're looking for, weakness, just to stab weakness, go for the names that have been weak already, right? And I really wish I saw Apple into Friday here, because this looks beautiful. Channel, I was waiting for this channel break. Ended up losing. Wow. Ended up losing that 257 level, ended up coming down to 255 level. That's exactly the level I needed or wanted to see under that 257. So $3 drop puts definitely would have paid. And of course, we have a gap from 255, which is that level it wicked off, all the way down to 253. I would have to assume that's going to be trying to fill it Tuesday or, overnight and all that stuff. So we will see kind of what that does there. Again, weakness. Apple's been weak. I like this. We will see. Ended up breaking that zone right there. You can see how many times we defended that zone, broke it, fell down. Again, stuff like that. So I really kind of wish I caught that, even though I banked off of, QQ puts. So pretty much the same thing. But this ended up kind of still going all day. Not too bad at all. So we will see kind of what happens with Apple does. Making that next leg down, not bad. Tesla was a good play Friday. Ended up playing that. QQ puts, and then we ended up dumping the last of our NVIDIA calls at open as we shot up to our 191, 190 target. Again, we have some decent setups. We just need to see what kind of happens here on the overnight and what kind of sticks, right? Because we'll see what futures kind of do. I assume it's low volume and they're just trying to, kind of push this back up a little bit more, which is not bad, because then that positions us for a possible, gap fill at open upward. That would be pretty cool. So we will see kind of what happens there. Game plans are set. So if you are a member, you have those access to the game plans. We're just waiting to see what happens here overnight. So we will see what happens there. All right. I think that's about it. Questions, let me know. DM me if y'all have any questions about anything. Let me know if y'all trying to join the team. DM me if you have any questions about that. WAP.com/Rio Capital. If you want to join, get anything you need. Alerts. RioCap AI now is you can only get access to RioCap AI through membership now. So no more paying for that. If you already are paying for that, and you're grandfathered in, so of course you have that until you cancel it. But now only access to that is through membership, which is awesome. Shout out to you guys as well. If you want to learn more about RioCap, riocap.com, learn more about the organization, get involved, learn how you can become a better trader, things like that, work on your game. I'm here for you. I got y'all. I'm always streaming. I'm always trying to help, giving out some free levels, stuff like that, whatever y'all need. As always, I'm always here. So Let me know if y'all need anything. I am done for this session. Kept it short and sweet. Let's see what kind of happens overnight. I'll obviously be updating y'all as the overnight session kind of opens out this tonight, and then we will see kind of what we do there. So let's see. Anyways, all right. Appreciate y'all showing up, guys. Let's be ready. I know going over these game plans, I'm not too concrete with, all right, above this, below this. And that's just because we don't know where we're going to be at overnight. Once we know that, then we can kind of paint a better picture. But one thing I am more concrete about is if we do get any type of gap down, be ready for a possible push up Tuesday for that gap fill upward. It's technically the better RR. You're not chasing juiced puts, right? You're playing super cheap calls. You can go light. You can, manage risk because you know how the trade should go. It should just go push up and it should be aggressive, right? We can kind of show an example of that on SPY. A really good example of that was not too long ago, actually. And where was it? Where we gapped down and we ate that gap pretty much right back up in that same day. Was it this past week? Yeah, there we go. It was on the 12th, which was what, last Tuesday? So we have a prime example last Monday, exactly a week ago. We had a gap down and we ate the gap all the way back up. You can see how massive this was. And to be honest, we caught that opening push. We caught calls right at open. No hesitation. I told the team going into that Monday, when we get a gap down, there's two ways to play this. Either we're going to get a squeeze push up into the gap. Either they fill it completely or they don't. Regardless, you cannot hesitate because you can win on the calls just with no hesitation. If there is no hesitation, you're going to win on them. Now, if they end up filling the gap, then obviously you're going to win big. If they don't fill the gap and they hit some of it and they fill some of it and then reject it, that's where I say the hesitation comes into play. You cannot hesitate because if you hesitate, you're going to be at the tail end of that, and you don't want to be on the tail end of that. Now, the other strategy is waiting to see that gap fill and to see if it ends up reversing back into low or end of day. We didn't get that. So that's why I say things have kind of changed, right? We got that gap down and massively pushed higher that day. Like our calls ran 400%. It was absolutely insane, from 490 all the way down, all the way up to 496, $6 move. Beautiful. And that was last Monday. So very interesting that we're going to get that technically on Tuesday, but on a Monday for us, very interesting to see if it plays out exactly like that. So best thing you can do, guys, is, like I said, go look at, kind of the last time we did something very similar to what you expect us to go do. And then kind of relook at those game plans or relook at how that day went and then be like, okay, what were the signs there? What kind of happens? At open, there was no type of playing around. It was a straight pushing. And exactly, what we want when you're filling a gap like that. So that's what we're going to be looking for if we do get that gap down. And thank God that we, kind of closed, we always close around the zones or at the zones. So we always fall to a zone. So we always just play the zones. So it's very easy when it's like these gaps, because it's just zone to zone. Regardless, we're playing zone to zone without a gap. So it's just as easy. It's just as cool. So easy stuff. Go look at the 12th, which was last Monday, if you want to kind of look at how we got a gap down and push right back up. Very interesting to see how that goes. So let's see kind of what happens there. Anyways, all right, done for this session. Let's see what they do here overnight. I'll keep y'all updated on the timeline. We will see. Game plans are set. Recap members are ready. Let's go. Sign up if you want my trades. Don't miss out. We had a lot of bangers last week, and last week was a tough week. So I would expect this week to be just as tough, but there will be bangers and we will go for them. So let's see what happens. Let's be ready. Anyways, appreciate y'all showing up.